5 months after the Great War, remnants of Rufus's Imperial Defense Force defy the ceasefire Erebonia had made with Calvert by occupying Crossbell. They wished for the war to resume so they can have dominance over the continent. Although Governor Reckness had requested the IDF to put a stop to their plan, this landed on deaf ears. In the middle of the broadcast by the IDF, Arc-NCL overrun the signal to commence the liberation of Crossbell, with the Grolls Ritter stationed on the Entertainment District, Bracers on East Street, CGF on West Street, CBD on Administrative District, Sight on Central Square, and the SSS on the Harbour District. They begin to overthrow the IDF. After hijacking a sold-out unit, the SSS begin to raid Orcus Tower. The SSS defeat the soldiers in their way, making their way to the roof, where they find the leader. On behalf of the Erebonian government, the group is arrested for occupying the city for 3 months. However, the IDF will not give up, as they were promised control over Zemuria with the National Mobilization Law. As such, they have chosen to fight on behalf of His Excellency. The SSS recognise that the soldiers can't be reasoned with, as their minds must still be warped from the influence of the curse somehow. The IDF then reveal their trump card in the form of a giant soldat. However, with enough perseverance, the SSS are able to destroy the machine. With the soldat defeated, the soldiers are taken into custody, where they are later imprisoned with Rufus in Oryx's fortress. With Crossbell's occupation finally lifted, and with the support of Arteria, Liberal, and Reverie, Crossbell is declared to be an independent state. But little did the neighbouring nations realise that Project Babel would soon commence. A month later, in preparation of the signing ceremony, the SSS are tasked with investigating the Geofront B sector for monster activity. Though instead of monsters, they instead find archaeums thought to be belonging to the IDF. They break it down before it begins to explode, though in the distance Lloyd notices a figure in the back. After dealing with the archaism, they return back to the surface where they attend the signing ceremony, where Archbishop Orelda validates the independence of Crossbell as a state. However, before Speaker McDowell can sign the validation, Rufus and soldiers from the Ebon Defense Force come to object to the declaration. The SSS are initially confused by how Rufus could escape jail, but change their focus to the soldiers that stand in their way. However, compared to last month, the soldiers in their way are much stronger before they notice a black aura surrounding them. With Wazy, Noel, and Risha providing the SSS backup, Rufus opts to take on the entirety of the SSS to crush the last remnant of hope for Crossbell. Even with the power of all the SSS combined, Rufus is able to defeat them all. Still determined for Crossbell's independence, Lloyd won't back down until Rufus extinguishes Crossbell's hero. As supreme leader of Crossbell, Rufus discards the SSS and instead invites his own allies. He then declares the unification of Zemuria through the nation of Crossbell, with the citizens of Crossbell cheering him on whilst under the influence of the Duskan Dancer. In Ymir, New Class 7 and Claire have been given an assignment by Aurelia. Suddenly, the group is attacked by Matthias, who challenges the group to defeat him unless they wish to be disqualified. Claire then assists Matthias by trapping Ash and Muse by an orbital mine while she attacks Yuna and Altina. The two struggle against Claire, with the same happening to both Kurt and Reen against Matthias. The pure power of Matthias leads to Kurt being knocked off the cliff. New Class 7 eventually get the upper hand on Claire after deactivating her trap, where they rush to provide backup for Reen. After meeting with Reen, Kurt manages to climb back up the cliff, where Reen and his students take down Matthias, passing their trial. However, after the battle, the group then hear the roar of a magic knight, where they later defeat it. However, Reen is confused by the manifestation of the knight, as the Septium veins are not stimulated like they were back during the Civil War or the Great Wall. Not to mention, the magic knights were created to fend off the divine knights, but with the divine knights gone, Reen is more confused as to why the magic knights are reappearing. After returning to the village, Claire reveals that the Courageous 2 that had both Oliver and Sherazade on board has gone missing. As such, the trial New Class 7 took part in was to verify that they would be capable to investigate the missing pair alongside Matthias. Later that night, the group is informed about the failed signing ceremony in Crossbell, with Rufus occupying the region. Claire also shows a video by a person known as C, the leader of the Reborn Imperial Liberation Front. C is the one responsible for kidnapping Oliver and Sherazade, with the next target being Heimdall. In the middle of the night, EDF soldiers stop a girl with pink hair, but after opening her suitcase, a bomb explodes in the soldier's face, with another boy assaulting two other soldiers. The pair defeat the other soldiers when Swin and Arya find the trunk they were contracted to deliver. But as they continue walking, they are ambushed by Albric's combat shell. None of their attacks are dealing damage until a masked person known as C helps them in battle, eventually defeating the combat shell. Both parties introduce one another, with Swan and Nadia realising their contract was to deliver the trunk to a person called C. The three open the trunk, where they find a living doll. Lloyd awakes in the boathouse near St. Ursula Medical College, with Risha checking in on him. She informs Lloyd what had happened after he'd passed out, with the SSS all separating around Crossbell. The two walk closer to Crossbell City, where they see soldat units scattered everywhere within the city. Soldiers of the EDF spot Lloyd and Risha and begin to ambush them. After the pair defeat them, one of the soldiers tries to call for backup, but Lecter prevents this from happening. He later explains that he and the other Ironbloods have no ties to what Rufus is doing before the three head to Amorica Village. On the walk there, Lecter explains that Rufus had escaped jail, as well as Olivet and Scheherazade had gone missing. As they near the village, they find Ellie fending off some monsters, with the trio aiding in her support. At the village, they find Cecily looking after Speaker McDowell, who sustained an injury during the ceremony. Lloyd's group is then given a letter informing them that Kia and Elia are being held hostage at the ancient battlefield. Reen's group split up to focus on their three objectives. Reen, Ash, and Altina investigate what C was referring to in Heimdall, Claire and Una investigate what's happening in Crossbell, Kurt and Matthias investigate Oliver and Shahrazad's whereabouts, and Muse is getting further support at the branch campus. Reen and Co talk with Aurea, who informs them that more people than usual have been coming and going into the capital, albeit with no festivals being held. Reen's group later finds Elliot at Meta Park, who reveals that Imperial soldiers have been spotted more than usual in the city. In a similar fashion, Eustace and Milliam are found at Draco's Plaza, where they have found fraudulent companies buying items in bulk. Afterwards, Ragnitz calls Reen and invites his group to a meeting at the Der Himmel Hotel. Ragnitz relays information from Van Dyke that multiple soldiers have been acting in support of Rufus's unification of Zemuria, with Alfin and Elise confirming that this is present at St. Estrella as well. As they try to leave, Lloyd notices a mirror in his pocket, confused as to how such an item could have ended up there. But that's when the mirror begins to activate, teleporting everyone to the True Reverie corridor. Lloyd's group teleport into the True Reverie corridor, confused as to how they entered the area to begin with. They have no memories of what transpired before they entered, but they begin to explore the area only to get more confused by the impossible structure. But that's when they notice Reen's group teleport to the TRC, where they exhibit the same confusion over the situation. After some more exploration, the Central Core boots up with it activating the Reverie Garden facilities. The Central Core then explains that the purpose of the TRC is to strengthen the users by overcoming trials. The Black Mirror has recruited everyone as an impossible singularity has spawned within Crossbell, with the success rate of overcoming said singularity is 0%. Entry to the Stratum to train has now been permitted. After returning from the TRC, Lloyd's group head to the ancient battlefield where they find Heyu guarding the Sun Fortress. They successfully fend off the Heyu members, but that's when Garcia joins the fight with Sao aiding him. Lloyd and Co eventually defeat the pair where they rescue Kia and Elia, but that's when Elia attempts to attack Risha, but she is saved by Zeit. Backup comes in the form of Wazy, Wald, Scarlet, and Zeit's brethren, causing Heyu, Garcia, and the Duskan Dancer to retreat. After opening the trunk, the trio introduce themselves to the doll, whom she introduces herself as Lapis. Confused as to why Rosenberg created a doll for C, the masked figure invites the doll to find her purpose. As for Swin and Nadia, C employs the two as extra support. They traverse through the Heimdall underground passageway to sneak into Heimdall, where they overhear two soldiers talking in private. To avoid unwanted attention, C's group split up to gather intel, while C uses a Ramdar cloaking device. C and Swin spot Reen in the Vanquia street, but later catch Imperial soldiers working alongside the EDF. Meanwhile, Nadia and Lapis are going on a food tour until they bump into Reen's group. Lapis falls into Milliam, with Nadia taking advantage of the situation by swiftly stealing Milliam's Arcus unit before the pair walk away. After finishing their meeting with Ragnitz, Reen's group decide to stop by the Bracer Guild to get some more information. However, Milliam ends up bumping into a girl. Altina then gets a message on her Arcus from the Intelligence Division. Confused as to why she didn't receive a notification, Milliam realizes that she's missing her Arcus. The group deduces that the two girls must have stolen it, with them eventually tracing Milliam's Arcus to Meta Park. They overhear Nadia mention a mask and conclude the pair must be part of the RILF. As a result, they plan to ambush their group later that night. On cue, Reen's group spot the four in the park, ambushing them. However, C recognizes that they have been tracked, and as such, their group introduces themselves as C, Dry, Nine, and Dolly respectively. Reen questions what their plan is for kidnapping Oliver and Scheherazade, though C dodges the question. The two groups then fight one another, though C's group end up retreating using the underground passageway. Reen's group follow the passageway when they find bulk of goods. They later find Imperial soldiers collaborating with the EDF soldiers, though when they try to arrest the soldiers, one of them pulls out a black ornament that deactivates all of Reen's group's orbital devices. Regardless, the soldiers are defeated with backup from Ragnitz arresting the traitors, whilst Reen's group continues to pursue the RILF. As C's group venture further, they are interrupted with EDF soldiers from behind. They defeat the soldiers and extract information on what Rufus plans to do as Supreme Leader of Crossbell, before exiting at Himmel Cemetery. However, they are sought by the likes of Crow, who occupies them until Reen's group catches up. A second round of battle commences between C and Reen's group, though after evading multiple attacks, Eustace is able to land an attack breaking C's mask, revealing it to be Rufus. Confused as to how Rufus could be in two places at once, Rufus takes his leave on board an airship. However, Rufus admits that he played no role in kidnapping Oliver and Shahrazad, nor the occupation of Crossbell. He does however point Reen's group in the direction of Nord before flying away. That night, Rufus explains to his group that the Rufus in Crossbell is an imposter. The night before the signing ceremony in Crossbell, Rufus was in Oryx's fortress before the building came under attack by EDF soldiers. They freed the IDF soldiers, but when it came to Rufus they tried to have him killed. Rufus managed to get the upper hand and extracted some valuable information as to what the EDF were up to. As a result, he wants to put a stop to the Supreme Leader and try to fix the mess that Crossbell is in right now. Their attention is moved to Lapis, with Rufus wanting to meet with York, curious why he hired both Swin and Nadia to bring Lapis to himself, as well as to help Lapis recover her memories. Later that night, Lapis and Rufus have a conversation as to what makes a person human, with Rufus believing himself to be less human for his actions in the past, though Lapis disregards this notion, as a person's actions don't dictate who they are. However, Lapis herself struggles to recognize what makes a person human, for she looks and acts human, but she's simply a doll. This causes Rufus to reflect on himself, with Rufus lacking meaning in his life as he felt like the product of nobility. This lack of meaning left him to idolize Osborn as he followed in his footsteps, but no matter how many objectives he successfully completed in Osborn's name, he never found meaning. This eventually led Rufus to begin to envy his younger brother, as Eustace found his resolve in life, albeit at a disadvantage. By morning, the group arrive in Crossbell with Rufus pretending to be the Supreme Leader. He later activates his Ramdar device so the group can wander around in Crossbell City. When they arrive in the entertainment district, they catch a recording of the Supreme Leader giving a speech, with the Duskin Dancer later hypnotizing the citizens to support the Supreme Leader. However, Rufus, Swin and Nadia get influenced by the Duskin Dancer, though luckily Ren is able to make them snap out of it before they meet in Imelda's shop. After hearing that the group is heading to York's workshop, Ren decides to accompany the group. However, once they start walking up the main mountain path, Rufus feels an object on his person with him pulling out the mirror. After recurring at Amorca village, Lloyd's group decide to investigate the Rhineford military factory. This is because the EDF have been frequently visiting the facility, with it being believed that that's where the soldats are being constructed. However, the only way to reach the factory would be through Crossbell City, which is off limits. Instead, they opt to sail over Lake Elm to find an alternative route. As such, Lloyd, Wazy and Kia arrive at St. Ursula Medical College to find information when they find Tio and Yona. However, they overhear evacuees from the city falling into despair over the occupation of Crossbell again. Though Wazy challenges the citizens for them putting the SSS on a pedestal as the heroes of Crossbell when they are just a branch of the police. Tio later confirms Lloyd's suspicion on the factory, with her mentioning that Novartis is involved, with her spotting him during the signing ceremony. Lloyd's group begin to traverse the underground train line when they spot Aga and Tita fending off EDF soldiers. After they defeat the soldiers, Tita explains that the pair are looking for Erica, as whilst the city got occupied, the EDF soldiers demanded Erica for some reason. As both parties plan to head to the factory, they group together. Reen's group updates Ragnitz on the soldiers aligning with the Supreme Leader. Claire then confirms that the Supreme Leader never left Crossbell, verifying that the Supreme Leader and C are not one and the same. As for the three accompanying Rufus, the Intelligence Division have no leads as to who they are. As a result, Reen, Kurt, Muse and Mueller leave by train to head towards the Nord Highlands. After arriving in Nord, Emma and Sarah greet Reen's group at Zenda Gate. Colonel Dalton later tells the group that the soldiers stationed at the Watchtower may have an insight to Oliver and Sherazad's kidnapping. The group travel to the nomadic settlement first, where they meet up with Gaius and his family. Gaius reveals that he's found no leads as to Oliver or Sherazad's whereabouts, but weirdly enough has found remnants of human activity over the land. However, when asking the soldiers about any suspects seen across the land, they denied ever seeing anyone. Kurt tries to call Mueller asking for any updates, but he doesn't respond. As a result, the group decide to head to the Watchtower to do their own investigating. That's when Lloyd's mirror begins to trigger. Rufus's group is then teleported to the true Reverie corridor, meaning both Lloyd and Reen's group. With all three groups now gathered, the central core unlocks the next stratum to train in. After the group arrive at the doll studio, they are stopped with the door completely locked, with Ren unable to hack it. Lloyd's group make it to the factory, but before they can enter the building, they are stopped by an archaism. Luckily, with the help of Elisa and Sharon, the archaism is defeated with the pair joining Lloyd's group. Elisa is shocked with how different the factory is since her last visit, with the locked door in their way being one of many changes. Though while trying to open the door, they notice another party on the server. After talking through the terminal, both Lloyd's and Rufus's groups are able to deactivate the locking mechanism, allowing both teams to continue their investigation. As Lloyd's group continue, they are confused as they find soldats and OZ units within the factory, which shouldn't be possible as only the Black Worship had the knowledge to produce said items. The only person who would be able to create such items would be Novartis, but that brings into the question as to how he got access to the technology to begin with. Upon further searching, they find a terminal with the words Project Babel, but the contents are too encrypted to find out the details of the project. After passing the door, Rufus's group explores the studio but eventually split up. Ren is greeted by her old parents, but she is aware that they are fake before she calls out Novartis for such a distasteful stunt. Novartis asks Ren if she would be willing to return to the society, for Ren was the best subject he ever had, but she declines. Novartis then ends his communication with Ren moving forward. Lloyd's group get to the end of the factory where they find Novartis. Aga and Tita demand Novartis, where Erica is being held, with Novartis revealing that both Erica and Professor Sayland are safe. Though before Erica can reveal what Novartis had both women work on, McBurnie appears pulling out his Angbar to defend the professor. McBurnie is impressed that Lloyd is able to keep up with himself, but that's when McBurnie tries to transform into his true form. However, before he can do so, his arm explodes, revealing machinery. The McBurnie clone then realizes that he's only a copy of the real one, with Novartis overjoyed with completing the development of the simulacra. With his experiment as a success, Novartis self-destructs the facility before teleporting away. After saving both Erica and Sayland, the group begin their escape of the building. However, an explosion causes a ring of fire to surround Lloyd, though thanks to Noelle, she's able to save him while she rides her motorcycle. As for Rufus and Lapis, Lapis confides in Rufus that she's scared of recovering her old memories for how it will affect her current memories. Though the pair is later ambushed by numerous copies of Lapis, causing Lapis to have an internal crisis about her existence as the replicas dogpile on her. However, Rufus is able to successfully find the true Lapis, with him reassuring Lapis that although the copies are identical in their appearance, none of them possess the memories that she has, making her the true Lapis. Then there's Nadia and Swin, who experience a change in gravity until they witness the Emperor. Confused about how both he's alive and how he got his artifacts back, he reassures them that it's all thanks to the Supreme Leader. He then invites the pair back to the organization, though they reject this proposition with no hesitation. But mid-battle, Nadia recognizes that the person they are fighting is not the real Emperor based on how he fights. Novartis praises the girl's intellect to deduce this fact, with him inviting her to become a test subject, though Nadia declines before Ren, Rufus and Lapis reunite. With the five of them back together, they attack the fake Emperor, defeating him when they find out that he's simply a machine. Novartis then projects himself, confirming that the Emperor was one of the toys he created, though as for the artifact, he had no role in its recreation. He then confirms that Ouroboros have no role as to what is happening in Crossbell nor Erebonia. He's only working on his own accord after he was messaged by some using the astral code. With his leave, he points the group in the right direction, with Rufus's group finding a machine. Lapis places herself in the machine, and although only some of her memories return, she reveals that she needs to find someone called Ian to fully recover her memories. After arriving at the watchtower, Reen's group notices a mass amount of weaponry in the distance, which were made for the Great War. They then find a soldier and ask about Mueller's whereabouts, but the soldier replies saying that Mueller had gone somewhere else, before asking the group to leave. When Reen's group return to the settlement, Dalton contacts Gaius, warning the group that Calvardian tanks are approaching the watchtower, and as such everyone should evacuate. Confused as to what Calvard is up to, Reen's group stop the tanks but find the tanks are in autopilot. They return to the settlement to find the area had been attacked by Erebonian tanks, but was stopped thanks to Aurelia. Schmidt then confirms that the tanks were in autopilot, as well as mentioning that strange orbital waves have been coming from the watchtower. Mueller then returns to the group believing the Imperial Division are behind everything. Reen's group head towards the watchtower whilst Mueller heads to the Zenda Gate, but both groups find no soldiers anywhere. Reen's group begins to ascend the tower, where they fight Archaeans in their way before reaching the roof where Arios resides. As the battle progresses, sparks are seen on Arios, with Reen and Aurelia eventually knocking the clone off the tower. With the roof clear, Schmidt begins to analyse the device, where it's revealed to be a projection that, when deactivated, reveals all the weaponry in the distance was fake, instead lays the Courageous 2. Colonel Dalton is frustrated with Reen's group's involvement and threatens to harm the couple if they interfere anymore, though Oliver and Sherazade prove that they aren't in harm's way over the orbital device. With Oliver to call, Reen's group teleports to the Courageous 2 and defeats the soldiers in their path until they reach Colonel Dalton. He is in full support of the Supreme Leader of Crossbell and wishes the unification of Zemiria. Although Reen's group overpower Dalton's men, the Imperial Division begin to surround the Courageous 2 and begin to fire. Luckily, a shield is activated to block out the attacks, as well as Mueller and Aurelia destroying the tanks. The Courageous 2 manages to lift off, but that's when the group hears word that both Erebonia and Calvardian weaponry are being gathered in Nord to restart the Great War. Reen's group split up to guard Nord, whilst Reen deactivates the orbital device, disabling the automated machines. However, it's not over, as Sarah ends up finding railway guns that were hidden under a projection, with their target being the settlement. All hope is lost, but Reen manages to manifest a turfin to fly and destroy the shell moments before it hits the settlement. But that's when something that looks like a Divine Knight spawns from the sky and begins to attack the nearby ships. Luckily, both Zeit and Rosilia prevent both airships from exploding upon impact. However, after the Knight disappears, the group is confused by Reen's new appearance. Rufus' group make their way through Nox Forest until they spot Duvalie fending off EDF soldiers, with the group coming to her aid. Although appreciative for the backup, once she finds out that the one behind the mask is Rufus, she attacks the man in the name of her lord. The two have a duel, with the group eventually explaining the whole situation with the Supreme Leader, so Duvalie joins the group. They make their way to the police academy as they begin to ambush the soldiers stationed out front, but that's when two Arios clones counter-attack. The group manages to keep up until they spot a third Arios, though luckily this is the real Arios who defeats his two clones. With both Rufus and Arios needing to see Ian, Arios joins the group as they raid the academy. They eventually find Ian, with Arios reuniting with Shizuku at last. Though before the truth about Lapis is revealed, a monstrous version of the Emperor attacks the group. They fend him off, but the replica of the artifact begins to regenerate his wounds. Upon activating the Monarch's regalia, Rufus's group is immobilized, though luckily, Zai is able to cancel out the artifact. Arios manages to cut off the beast's arm with Swin and Nadia destroying the artifact, which defeats the beast once and for all. Ian then explains what he knows of Lapis. One day he was contacted by someone who went by Elysium. Elysium possessed an abnormal amount of information, but with no motivation for why they knew all that they did. But Elysium was no human. It was an artificial intelligence created from the stimulation of the septium veins interacting with the orbal net. As such, Elysium possesses both knowledge and power to predict the future. However, from his interaction with Ian, Elysium managed to learn pseudo-emotions and human thought patterns, which resulted in the creation of Lapis. However, Lapis would stop talking to Ian before the Supreme Leader met with Ian asking to help with the unification of Zemuria. Ian had realised something had happened to Elysium, so he complied with the Supreme Leader. Ian then contacted both Garcia and Dieter to follow along with the Supreme Leader, whilst Ian remained in prison to share the truth to whoever brought Lapis to him. Lapis then verifies that Elysium was compromised, with the perpetrator trying to delete herself. As such, she had herself removed from the system and transferred to Yorg to create a body for herself. Lapis then instructed Yorg that the body was to be delivered to the person going as C. With everything cleared up, the group's plan was to now uncover the mastermind behind taking over Elysium. After escaping the factory, Noel takes Lloyd's group to a camp that the Crossbow police had set up near. After talking with their allies at Amorca village, they find out that the EGF soldiers have the CGF trapped at Maine's village. Therefore, Lloyd and Noel try to sneak their way up the village, but eventually get caught on the outskirts of the village. Luckily, Randy provides backup to fend off against the EGF soldiers. The trio make their way to the village, where they find Toa and Marcius. However, Morale is seriously injured. As for Sonya and the rest of the CGF, they are stationed at the Moon Temple. Suddenly, a CGF soldier arrives in the village injured, reporting that the EDF with the Dusk and Dancer had attacked their group. Lloyd's group head towards the temple to provide support for Sonya's group, but while traversing through the tunnel, they are sought by EDF soldiers and soldates. Luckily, Estelle and Joshua and the Crossroad branches come to their aid. They successfully defeat the soldiers and make it to the Moon Temple, where in the depths, they catch the Dusk and Dancer hypnotizing the CGF soldiers onto the Supreme Leader's side. After fighting her in battle, they recognize that this isn't a clone but instead the real Elia, who's been brainwashed thanks to the mask that she's wearing. Lloyd's group almost break her out of the mind control, but the mask's control is too strong. As a result, the Dusk and Dancer teleports away, with Lloyd's group returning back to the bridge to help attack against the EDF. Upon the EDF retreating, Lloyd's group returns back to Mainz, where they find Morale has recovered. With the SSS finally reunited, a meeting is held to discuss what Lloyd's plan is next, but that's when they are interrupted by a broadcast from the Supreme Leader. The broadcast is being emitted across the entire continent, with the Supreme Leader announcing the start of the unification of Zemuria, with him asking both Erebonian and Calva to comply by the next day, unless they wish to be invaded. That's when Lloyd is contacted by Reen. Reen's group is confused about how Reen was able to manifest a soul dot, with Roselia believing it to be the result of a resonance phenomenon due to the Divine Night. Granted, she herself still doesn't understand how the night could exist at all, as the Divine Nights disappeared after the Great Twilight. Though Zai proposes that it could be due to the Septium Veins, with the distortion in Crossbow manifesting the Divine Night. As such, Crossbow is their new destination, though with both the Courageous 2 and the Merkabah severely damaged, their only way to Crossbow is by teleportation. They land in the wetlands where Reen's group split up to avoid being detected by the EDF. Reen's group heads towards Michelin, Sarah's group to St. Ursula Medical College, and Claire's to Crossbell City. Reen's group is confused as to why there are so many EDF soldiers in Michelin, with him concluding that they must be hiding something within the area. As a result, Reen's group begins to liberate Michelin, where they find out that soldiers were ordered by the Supreme Leader to monitor Michelin Wonderland for some reason. Therefore, Reen's group begin to investigate the theme park, when in the Castle of Mirrors they get attacked by clones of themselves. They manage to get to the end where they pass the hidden wall, but Reen ends up seeing images of all of his allies mourning his death. When the group walk into the next room, they find another Reen. They try to defeat the lookalike, but aren't successful, though Reen is able to crack the mask. They ask for the being's name, but the name doesn't exist, this verifying that this isn't a simple clone. That's when the being summons Zoa Gilstein, the Zeroth Knight, and says his goodbye to Class 7 before retreating. After disabling the terminal, everyone's Arcus units begin playing a broadcast by the Supreme Leader announcing the start of the unification of Zemuria. After the broadcast ends, Reen decides to call Lloyd. Lloyd and Reen exchange information, with both groups worried that the new president of Calvard will attempt to invade Crossbow after their threat. Rufus then interrupts their meeting by informing them about Elysium and how Lapis will be the key to fixing everything. As such, the three groups make a plan to liberate Crossbow, with Lloyd's group raiding from the south, Reen from the east, and Rufus from the west. The next day, the liberation of Crossbow commences, with each group defeating waves of EDF soldiers until all three groups converge at the administrative district. Risha then challenges the Dusk and Dancer, with the two dancing with Risha's dance bringing hope back to the people of Crossbell, whilst Reen and Lloyd's group deal with the massive soul dot in front of them. Rufus's group on the other hand squeezes past to meet with the Supreme Leader. The Supreme Leader offers the position to Rufus as he would finally be able to live up to Osborne, but Rufus declines the offer before initiating battle. Rufus's group manages to get the upper hand, but the Dusk and Dancer joins the Supreme Leader. However, Reen's group and Void's group shortly follow, giving Rufus their aid. After an intense battle, Rufus manages to defeat his clone, with Risha breaking the mask that's taking control over Lelia. However, with the EDF finally defeated, a structure appears over Lake Elm with its student laser that obliterates Unival Fortress. A pre-recorded message of the Supreme Leader plays with him announcing Crossbell's ultimate weapon, the Retributive Tower. The three groups later meet to discuss how to deal with the tower. Speaker McDowell had already spoken to Regnitz and President Gramhart, though Crossbell had been given a deadline to deal with the tower before Gramhart sent his own troops to deal with the issue. Though if Crossbell fails to deal with the tower or relies on Calvert's military, then Gramhart will view Crossbell as being incapable of being an independent state. The group support Lapis's plan to infiltrate into the tower and connect herself into Elysium to deactivate the weapon. As a result, everyone gathers on top of Orcus Tower to begin the operation. The Retributive Tower generates a shield and launches every remaining soldier, whilst the CGF, CBD, Force students, Bracers, Ouroboros, Jaegers, and the Grolsritter combat against the tower. Everyone is then teleported aboard the RCL-2, where the strongest warriors of Erebonia deflect a direct attack from the tower, creating an opening. Everyone teleports into the tower into three groups as they begin to raid the tower. All three groups reunite when they get to the core of the tower and find Ishmael Reen, a being that exists in an alternative timeline. After Ishmael Reen manifested, it corrupted Elysium, kicking Lapis out of the picture. But the goal remains the same, for Ishmael Reen is trying to save the world by removing all seeds of disaster. However, as Administrator of Elysium, Lapis objects to what Ishmael Reen says by noting that Elysium's only role is to observe and calculate. As such, the entire group begin to attack Ishmael Reen, but their attacks do nothing. That's when Ishmael Reen summons his Divine Knight, the Great One, Septarian of Steel. Roselia teleports the group some soldats and turfings, but their attacks don't do much. Though with the existence of the Zeroth Knight, Valimar, Odin, and Alprado are able to connect to the three Awakeners, giving them their strength. Whilst the three battle the Zeroth Knight, Lapis sneaks past and connects herself to Elysium and revokes Ishmael Reen's rights, weakening him significantly. Reen and Crow manage to finish Ishmael Reen off when both Reens appear in another dimension. The other Reen asks Reen to sacrifice himself by merging with the recreated Ishmaelga, for it will corrupt the minds of Zemuria once again if it's left on its own. However, Reen can't do that as he knows the pain it will cause everyone he knows, albeit saving Zemuria. Besides, he was able to defeat Ishmaelga once before with the help of his friends, therefore if he does return they will be able to find another solution. After returning to his own dimension, Ishmaelga has corrupted the Zeroth Knight. As such, everyone begins the final battle where in the end they are eventually victorious. Lapis then declares that she will be deleting Elysium as it's too powerful for mankind yet. Instead, they should be the ones to create something like Elysium on their own. However, Lapis can't stop the operation of the tower shooting out its laser, with Ishmaelga programming the laser to shoot wherever humanity has hatred towards. Suddenly, Pleuromograss manifests all over Zemuria, with it connecting to the minds of humans to calculate where people's hatred is located. With no other option, Emma and Celine teleport everyone out of the tower. However, Rufus stepped out of the spell, beginning a broadcast to Zemuria announcing that everything that's happened in the past 2 years has been his own doing to unite Zemuria. As a result, everyone's hatred begins to be directed at Rufus, with a laser obliterating the Retributive Tower. With no other option, Emma and Celine teleport everyone out of the tower, but Lapis witnesses the final production of Elysium with herself, Swin, Nadia, Lloyd, Eustace, and Zeit teleporting back into the tower to save Rufus. Within the tower, Reen from the previous timeline saves Lapis and warns the group that in 3 years, but Lloyd cuts him off, reassuring him that humanity will be able to overcome it. The group eventually finds Rufus, with his team and brother reassuring him how much he's loved. Zeit manages to teleport everyone out just moments before the Retributive Tower is obliterated. A week passes since the destruction of the tower, with Rufus awakening in a hospital bed. Oliver explains that although he's committed many crimes, he can't serve any of them as Supreme Leader Rufus was killed in the Retributive Tower, and this is verified as the entire continent witnessed it. Rufus is then given a laptop, where he watches the broadcast of Crossbell finally gaining its independence. Although Elysium might have been dealt with, the TRC has its own problems with the central core unable to terminate its processes. It identifies an irregularity creating errors within the space due to the tempering of causality in reality. The group believes that this irregularity could be due to Elysium trying to infiltrate the space when it was still active. As such, they begin to traverse the depths of the TRC. However, whilst climbing the higher stratums, a figure taunts the group in their attempts to stop itself. After defeating copies of Argras and Roselia, the figure reveals itself with it resembling Kia. She warns the group one last time before vanishing. It's later revealed that the central core is actually an artifact, Azoth, the observer of causality and the author of the Black Records. It's been operating for the past 1,200 years to guide Erebonia. After defeating copies of 3 Dominion, the figure is impressed with the group's resolve, believing they have what it takes to defy fate. With that, she introduces herself as OZXX before opening another dimension where 2 causalities interact. Before entering the new dimension, the group come to realize that OZXX was the original prototype of the homunculus that the gnomes copied from the alchemists of the past. This explaining as to why she looks like Kia. Therefore, Elysium must have made a copy of her to try and interfere with the TRC. As a result, the group make their way to the final stratum where they find OZXX in a garden full of paroma grass. She then reveals that she was the original Zero Child, and as such, she is preventing the Demigororus from manifesting in this dimension. However, Kia, Altina, Milliam, and Lapis ask if she is happy with the burden placed upon her, when she wishes for the Demigororus to be set free. That's when OZXX transforms into the Demigororus. The group managed to defeat the Septurion, with her thanking the group now that she can finally sleep for eternity. OZXX then thanks the group, as well as for setting her free before she disappears. With her disappearance, Azoth can finally shut the TRC down. So just like in Third, Reverie has additional stories in the form of daydreams. But from the 25 daydreams, I will only be covering 4. The first is another hot springs paradise that follows Reen and his family as they visit Longlai and Calvert. Although they enjoyed both the food and the hot springs, the truth was Reen had only come to Longlai after hearing a rumour that young Kafai was in the area. As such, Reen begins to traverse the area, stumbling through the Kunlun mountains in search of his master, until he notices 2 shinobi tailing him. He defends against their attacks, but is shocked to see how similar their sword techniques are. He then asks if they are part of the 8 Leaves One Blade School, though they decline as for they are Ikaruga, practitioners of the Black God One Blade School. That's when a third figure attacks Reen, a man that goes by Kurogane. He forbids Reen from going any further into the mountains, and as such, the two continue the fight with one another, with their blades clashing with every strike. That's until Reen uses his enlightened spirit unification to get the upper hand and deliver the winning blow, but his attack is then countered by a woman with silver hair. Her attack is so strong that it splits Reen's Tachi in half. The woman that goes by Princess tells Reen that their master is not in Longlai, and as such he should return to his family. With that, she and the other Ikaruga vanish into the night. The second is an unconventional student that follows Ran as she enrolls at Aramis Academy in Calvert. Tita and Ran still keep in contact via the Orbital Net, with Tita remarking how the Verne Company rejected joining the West Zemirian Tech Union. Not to mention, the Verne Company seemed to be cutting ties with the Epsilon Foundation in pursuit to develop the next generation of battle ordnance. Both girls believe that this could be due to Professor Hamilton stepping down as technological advisor from the company. As for Aramis, Ran continuously gets harassed by a boy known as Ronald Griffith, son of one of the Republic's senators, after declining to join his circle. His antics to bully Ren fail, however, with him beginning to outright threaten her, though a student with blonde hair overhears his threats with the girl signing up for Ren. But when it came to the student council president election, Ren would get the last laugh, for she exposed Ronald for the snake that he was for using underhand tactics to become student council president. Angered by her actions, Ronald would later hire gang members to get rid of Ren, but that's when she pulls out her scythe and knocks all the members unconscious with ease. All Ronald had was his father's position in Parliament, but even that was no longer valid, for she reveals that Representative Griffith is under investigation by the CID for having connections to organised crime. He had finally lost, with Ronald passing out. Dingo, the reporter who wrote the article, thanks Ren for finding the dirt on the politician, as well as praising her for her combat prowess. In the end, Ren would be elected as student council president, with Ren inviting the blonde-haired girl as well as 2 of her friends to the student body. The third is Forward, sword in hand, that follows a female bracer. She declines the position of A rank as she still feels inexperienced whilst only being with the guild for 6 months. She later goes to a bar to meet with her informant to help with the current case that she's on. She's currently investigating 2 missing children. That's when she is reminded of her blue-haired childhood friend who had started a business that rivaled the Bracer Guild, but was morally grey in the eyes of the law. That's when her bespectacled childhood friend who works for the CID finds the Bracer and gives her a lead on the missing children. With this lead, the Bracer works alongside Zin to raid a base that is thought to hold the children. The Bracer begins to fend off countless men until she finds the leader. She holds her blade to the man demanding where the children are, with him confessing that the children are still alive further into the building. However, he wasn't doing this for himself, but rather working for the likes of A. But in that moment, all of the men that the Bracer had fended off had been killed with their corpses mutilated, with the leader following suit. The being that did this was in the room with the Bracer, but she couldn't see him. Trying to attack this person yielded nothing as her attacks were deflected with ease. Impressed with the Bracer's swordsmanship, he decides to spare her and the 2 children's lives, though when asked about its motive, it simply replies that it wants to instill fear before it retreats. She didn't process what kind of motivation that was until she found the 2 children. When the Bracer tries to approach the 2 children, they pull out weapons on her, fearful for what she might do. However, she reassures the children she won't harm them for she's a Bracer. After rescuing them, it came to light that both children witnessed an illegal transition, and as such they were groomed into becoming assassins like that of the Gardens. Although the Bracer was shaken up from the encounter, the fact that she could bring hope and security to others from being a Bracer, this fueled her to accept her promotion. As a result, Elaine became the fastest A-rank Bracer, beating the Purple Lightning's record. Finally, in Look Back to Look Forward, follows McBurn as he enters the Celestial Globe. The Grandmaster foresaw his arrival and praises his ability to enter the space after recovering half of his memories. However, his assistance for the Orpheus final plan is still required. A replacement for the 7th Anguist has also been arranged, though the Grandmaster is still waiting for the candidate to accept the position. That's when Novartis interrupts their meeting, asking the pair if they know the cause for his simulation's deletion, with McBurn believing it to be the group operating in Orid to be at fault. But that's when President Gramhart interrupts their meeting with him greeting the Grandmaster. He then proposes an alliance with the Grandmaster. For the 2.5 years, Ouroboros shall not interfere with his plan, and vice versa. The Grandmaster agrees to his proposition.